Welcome, and in this video we're going to look at searching Google, and specifically we're going to look at how to use some of the functions in the Google Advanced Search, which will be useful to you and that you should have read about in the material for this module. So we're going to use the same topic that we've been using in the examples in all these videos, which is the human impact on the Great Barrier Reef. So we're starting with the basic Google search page, which I would imagine is familiar to a lot of people. We're just going to start with the basic search for Great Barrier Reef as our example. So we've searched for that and we've come up with, or Google has come up with, nearly 23 million results, which is a lot. So if we're going to be looking for specifically information that's going to be useful in a university setting or scholarly information that could be used in an assignment if you were researching this topic, you would probably not want to spend time going through that huge number of results, even though it might be looking like the initial ones are pretty useful. So what we need to do is go to the Google Advanced Search function, which allows us to refine and narrow our search a little bit more, like we did when we used Discover It with the SICK University Library. So to go to Google Advanced, you go to this little button here, this Options, in the right hand top corner of your page. If you click on that once, you can see a menu appears and we can choose Advanced Search. So let's do that. And it brings up the Google Advanced Search page. So you can see here there's a lot more options as to where you can enter keywords and ways of narrowing our results. So let's just have a look around here first. So at the moment, if we were going to search here, we're asking Google to find pages with all of these words appearing in them. Great Barrier Reef. Now the interesting thing about Google is that you do not have to type in your Boolean operators like we did in Discover It, and they don't really appear on the page in the options. Google's just built them into its search functions. So when we're searching for all of these words, it's like we're searching for great and barrier and reef, okay, but we don't need to type those ands, so it's saving us time, so we can thank Google for that. If we wanted to use this second one, search for this exact word or phrase, we'd type it in again, and that's like putting, saying to Google, those three words must appear together, one after the other like that, as a phrase that we would recognise. So there's not a great deal of difference between typing Great Barrier Reef here and Great Barrier Reef there. It's just that somewhere in the depths of your results that you would get from your search, you might have great in one part of the article, and then you might have the word barrier somewhere else, and then you might have the word reef somewhere else if you used all of these words. They need not necessarily appear referring to the thing we know as the Great Barrier Reef. So that's one that you might not use. If we use this one, any of these words, and typed in Great Barrier Reef, this is like using the OR Boolean operator. So Google is going to search for great or barrier or reef. Let's have a look what happens when we do that. Right, a huge number of results, and you can see here that not many of them initially are to do with the Great Barrier Reef, because what Google is, something weird's happened there, but what Google is searching for is any of those words. It might be the word great appear, or the word barrier might appear, or the word reef might appear in the result. It doesn't necessarily mean that all three of those words have to be there. And if you wanted to limit your search, we might search for Great Barrier Reef, but we don't want anything to do with Australia. So this is saying we want to search for Great Barrier Reef. In fact, we'll put it up in the top one. So we want to search for Great Barrier Reef, but we don't want anything to do with Australia. So it's saying Great Barrier Reef, not Australia. We don't want that word in any of our results. Let's see how that goes for Google. So it has brought our number of results down, but probably if you were looking at information about the Great Barrier Reef, you probably would want it in an Australian context, depending on what assignment you were doing. But that's what that search box is used for in this Google Advanced Search. So now, if we are wanting to limit our search further though, and wanting to find particular types of information that's published by particular organisations, the most useful option that Google gives us is to limit our search, narrow our results by what it calls the site or domain. So we might want to find information about the Great Barrier Reef published by government sources or government organisations. So Google lets us narrow our result, and we do that by telling it that we want just sites that have .gov in their URL or in their web address. So these are all going to be government sites. Let's have a look how we go. Okay, we've got 24,000 results here, so a great deal less, and they are all from either government departments or government organisations. So that's pretty good, but it's still a lot of results, and we might decide that, okay, we want government sites that come from Australia. So to do that, we use .gov.au, and Google recognises AU, and AU is the letters that we see in web addresses if they're Australian organisations. So now we want Great Barrier Reef just from government departments or organisations in Australia. And interestingly, that's brought us back to a larger number of results. So we've got Australian sites there, but what we need to do now is think back to our topic and think, well, what other keywords are important here? We're not just wanting to know about the Great Barrier Reef, we're wanting to know about human impact on the Great Barrier Reef. So we go back up to where we've entered our keywords, and we put human impact Great Barrier Reef. And remember, that's saying to Google, search for human and impact and great and barrier and reef all together. Let's have a look. So now we're down to just over 9,500, which is much less than we started off with when we just did our basic Google search. So to keep refining that, you could change some of your keywords. Okay, we might have tourism, coral bleaching, impact, Great Barrier Reef, .gov.au. Now we're down to 2,990, and most of those look like they could be useful to some degree, but look, a lot of them are about climate change. Let's see how we could, if we wanted to, get rid of that out of our results. So let's use the not function. We don't want anything that mentions climate change, but we're still looking at this same topic here. Now we have 219 results that are from Australian government sites, and they're to do with tourism, coral bleaching, and that impact on the Great Barrier Reef, but we didn't want anything about climate change in there. So that's one way that the not function can be useful, using none of those words, to limit or erase some results that Google would normally have picked up. We'll get rid of that one. Now the other type, other way you can use this is by not only searching for government sites. Let's say you wanted education sites or organisations, and to be able to see what they have published on the internet about this topic. We use EDU for education, and we use AU again for Australia. And that brings us back to 2,000 or so, which for Google is a fairly small amount, as we've seen. And these are all from institutions and publications that are educational or have identified themselves as educational through their web address. The other thing we could do there is we could say, all right, I don't want information from Australia, I want information from the United Kingdom. So I want web addresses that have UK in there. Let's see. So there's nothing. So that's interesting. So that really tells us that, well, that didn't work to start with, but there's no documents really for UK there. We could try a different one if we wanted to see what commercial or business organisations had to say about this topic, that Google would find us. We use the .com for commercial or business institutions, and AU again for Australia. And so that's brought it up to 7,220, and you can see there .com should appear in all of the results that we get. So that's a really basic introduction to Google Advanced. The main thing that you need to take away from this is how to limit your search by site or domain, and where to put in your keywords and what these instructions mean, because it's slightly different to what you've looked at in Discover It. Now, there's one last thing that we'll look at, and that is, we saw how to get to Google Advanced after we'd done a search, but if you want to start searching straight in Google Advanced and you want to get to it, you can just Google it. It's the first result that comes up, and there we have the advanced search page where we started. So Google doesn't have the advanced search as appearing on its basic page that you will come to. We can't get to it from here, but you can either do a search first and then choose it from the options button that we saw, or you can just Google Advanced Search. Okay, that's it for now.